Singapore Airlines Flight 319 was supposed to be just another routine long-haul journey from London to Singapore. After nearly 14 exhausting hours in the air, the crew expected nothing more than a normal landing at Singapore Changi Airport, one of the busiest and most advanced airports in the world. Passengers were preparing for arrival, checking their phones, thinking about connecting flights, hotel bookings, and finally reaching home. Everything seemed normal. But high above Southeast Asia, a dangerous storm was building. And within the next few hours, that storm would turn this routine flight into a terrifying fight for survival. As Flight 319 approached Singapore, the pilots received updated weather information from air traffic control. A massive thunderstorm had formed directly over the airport. Heavy rain was falling across the runways, lightning flashed across the dark sky, and strong crosswinds were shifting direction every few minutes, making landing extremely dangerous. Visibility dropped so low that pilots could barely see the runway lights. Even for experienced crews, these were conditions that demanded absolute focus. Inside the cockpit, the captain looked down at the fuel display. That number mattered more than anything else. Because of stronger than expected headwinds during the long flight from London, they had already burned more fuel than planned. Technically, they still had enough to land safely, but only if everything went smoothly. And tonight, nothing was smooth. Air traffic control instructed Flight 319 to enter a holding pattern north of Singapore. This meant they had to circle in the sky and wait for landing clearance. For passengers, it felt like a delay. For pilots, it felt like a countdown. Every single minute in the air meant more fuel disappearing. Every turn around the holding pattern brought them closer to a decision they didn't want to make. The crew checked the weather radar again. The storm wasn't weakening, it was getting stronger. The captain had planned for alternate airports if Singapore became unavailable. Nearby airports like Batam, Johor, and Kuala Lumpur were part of the backup plan, but now even some of those alternates were reporting bad weather. The safe options were slowly disappearing. The active runway at Changi had to be changed because dangerous tailwinds made the original landing direction unsafe. Aircraft already lined up for landing were forced to reposition.
319 approach control. Expect ILS approach runway 20 right, Changi.
This created even more delays, more waiting, and more fuel burning. Finally, after what felt like forever, ATC cleared Flight 319 for approach. The crew prepared the aircraft for landing. Checklist complete. Landing gear ready. Passengers were unaware of how serious things were becoming. The aircraft descended through heavy rain, and the captain searched outside for the runway lights. But instead of lights, there was only gray, only storm, only uncertainty. Then came the message every pilot fears. Changi Airport is suspending arrivals. All runways are now closed. That was it. No landing. No more chances at Singapore. The captain and first officer looked at each other. There was no need for words. Fuel was now dropping dangerously close to reserve levels. Their safest option was now Hang Nadim Airport, a smaller airport in Indonesia located south of Singapore. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't designed for large aircraft like their Boeing 777. But right now, it was their best chance. Still, the captain hesitated. He asked for one more hold. One more chance for Changi to reopen. One more chance to avoid missed connections, stranded passengers, and a chain reaction of delays across the airline network. That hesitation became the most dangerous decision of the night. Because while they were waiting, the storm began moving south, directly toward Batam. Now both airports were becoming dangerous. The first officer checked the fuel again. The number was falling fast. There was no more room for hope. Finally, he said the words that changed everything. "We need to divert now." This call should have happened 20 minutes earlier. The captain agreed, and Flight 319 turned away from Singapore and headed for Batam. But even diversion was not simple. Batam Airport was a smaller regional airport. Controllers there were not used to handling large international aircraft like this one. Ground staff had to confirm if the runway could support the aircraft, if parking space was available, and if emergency services were ready. All of this took precious time, and time meant fuel. As they approached Batam, the weather got worse again. Rain intensified. Winds shifted violently. The storm had followed them. The crew now had only one real chance, one landing, no mistakes. They lined up for runway 22, but as they descended, the tailwind became too strong. Landing with that much tailwind could send the aircraft off the runway. The captain made the call. Going around, the engines roared, the aircraft climbed away, and more fuel was gone. They tried again, this time for runway 04, where an ILS approach and autoland system could help them land safely in poor visibility. This should have made things easier. But they were too close to the runway, too high and too fast. The autopilot couldn't properly capture the glide slope. Suddenly, the cockpit display flashed. No autoland. Now they were low, in heavy rain, and off center line. The captain couldn't even see the runway. Another go-around. Second failed attempt. Fuel remaining, critically low. Stress inside the cockpit was now overwhelming. The captain was trapped in something pilots fear called plan continuation bias. It means continuing with the original plan, even when everything says it's time to change. Kept hoping. Kept trying. But fuel does not care about hope. Soon the aircraft dropped below final reserve fuel. This was no longer caution. This was now an emergency. The captain made the call no pilot ever wants to make. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Fuel. Everything changed. Now they had absolute priority. No more waiting, no more delays, only survival. They lined up again. Third approach. Still unstable. Too high. Too fast. The warning system screamed inside the cockpit. Sink rate. Sink rate. The aircraft was descending dangerously fast, too close to the ground. Again, the captain had to choose. Force an unsafe landing or go around again with almost no fuel left. He chose survival. Third go around. Fuel remaining. Only 1,400 kilos. At this point, there was no backup plan. No second airport, no extra chances. Only one final attempt. The captain used a teardrop maneuver to quickly line up for runway 22 one last time. This time, there would be no hesitation. No perfect landing. Only getting the aircraft safely on the ground. Rain hammered against the windshield. The runway lights finally appeared. Clear enough, close enough. The first officer called the altitudes. 500, 400, 300. The aircraft was stable. For the first time all night, they had it. At 100 feet, the captain gently pulled back. The main landing gear touched down. Runway 22. Bottom. Safe. After multiple holding patterns, 3 failed approaches, and a full fuel emergency, Flight 319 was finally on the ground. Fuel remaining at landing, less than 500 kilos. If they had gone around one more time, they would not have made it. That night, 280 passengers walked away safely. But inside that cockpit, the lesson was unforgettable. Sometimes survival in aviation is not only about flying skill. Sometimes it is about making the right decision before it becomes the last decision.